The following podcast is brought to you by A.C.T, Agorist Center of Thought. Here only on the Voluntary Virtues Network. Every Saturday, 9 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join us on the dark side of radio. Agora, Anarchy, Action. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Agora Underground. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Voluntary Virtues Network. I am Comrade Dick, your host here for the Agora Underground, sitting in with Darian, the man, the hairy man.
The hairy man. I don't know about all that. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's D from Free San Antonio here, chilling with main man Richard here.
Also got a fellow comrade in the revolution, Steve, sitting here in studio with us.
Steve-O.
Hey, how y'all doing?
That is right. We are in association with Free San Antonio, a subchapter of Free Detroit, and we're just trying to bring anarchy to real life, to our own personal lives, to the real world, and just trying to spread the philosophy, ladies and gentlemen. We figured, hey, we needed to definitely have an Agorist show for all you ANCAPs and objectivists, which we definitely consider ourselves on board with those philosophies as well. So we just figured, hey, you know what? Agorism is more than counter-economics, right? It's a whole philosophy in itself, and what better way to approach a whole philosophy than to read a primer written by the founder of the philosophy, the Agorist Primer, Counter-Economics, Total Freedom in You by Samuel Edward Konkin. So we spent the first episode talking about that, reading up on that, first chapter, economics, and what we're going to be getting into the second chapter, applied economics. So definitely stay tuned with that. Before we get started, though, any big developments in y'all's personal lives, fighting the state, fighting fighting the aggressors, trying to flex your own sovereignty. How's that going with you guys?
Well, all I know as far as counterculture and counter economics, I mean, like I got my my backyard. My vegetables are growing in pretty nicely. Gonna be making sure that my family eats healthy and eats organic, not natural flavors, organic flavors. Thank you very much. Don't want the genes spliced. And really just trying to get out there on the streets and not only talk to people about what is wrong with our system and our culture and our food and pretty much everything, but trying to explain to him what the countermeasures could be for like the solution, like reacting to that problem.
Yeah, definitely, right?
Yeah.
Want to find peaceful, voluntary solutions to the state apparatus. How do we properly emancipate ourselves from the control of other men, right? How do we properly do that? And that's the challenge of agorism, is finding a way to bring about this free, voluntary, stateless society. How do we go about doing that? And before we even get really too far into agorism, Konkin was going over the basic stuff. He went over economics, chapter 1. Chapter 2 we'll be covering today, maybe even getting into chapter 3, but chapter 2 is applied economics. So I'm just going to go ahead and kick it off, start breaking this down. We'll see if we'll pull out the gems and polish off the dust if there's any to be found. So chapter 2, applied economics. Agorism is more than economics, but agorist thinking is impossible without that basic understanding. Just applying the basic economics we have learned so far can sweep away a lot of misconceptions and eliminate a lot of confusion about how the world actually works. We also can deal with some of the misleading con jobs of economists. However, explaining why economics is so twisted will have to wait until we apply libertarianism later. For the free market. Agorism upholds the free market. To understand why, one first needs to know what the free market is and what its alternatives are. Again, why is left for later? Or why, right? The whys is left for later. The term agorism is derived from the ancient Greek word agora, meaning an open marketplace. The market is not a single place or center goods and services are exchanged at the corner store or on the stock exchange or at a swap meet in your backyard or across the internet. Playing a game with a friend is not a market transaction, but foregoing that time that each of you could have spent on working or buying or selling is a market transaction. That's a good point, right? Everything you spend your time on, that is in essence an economic market transaction. You have a finite amount of time, and we're not immortal, right? We're eventually all going to die, so our time here on this earth is finite. And how we allocate our time, well, that takes economics, right? You're allocating a certain amount of goods, time, to what you want to fulfill and what you want to finish. So
I think self-sufficiency is the key. It really isn't. Isn't that what you're saying? Have control over your own food, your own water supply, have your own shelter paid for. What else is there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's definitely part of it. But we do acknowledge as well that the one person, one individual can't be fully self-sustaining within themselves, because if they could, then people would simply refuse to partake in society. And
Yeah,
it's
like you would just have a bunch of people not like
Yeah,
interacting with
well,
other people, or
right,
or asking other people for some sort of a labor or a good or service, because then they would be able to do it all by themselves. I mean, do you know how to work your phone? You know how to make a laptop on your own? Do you know how to fix your electricity when it needs to be
right.
fixed? I mean, you know how to do all that by
Literally
yourself?
hundreds of thousands of people involved in making these products.
Yeah. I mean, you might as well be a superhero at that point. You can just do it all. You can't be 100% self sufficient. I mean, gotta rely on others' help. I mean, that's like there's an
It's part of
example of
division of
that.
labor, yeah.
Well, there's an example of that just in nature. I mean, you have your family, and your family is helped you out with the goods that they give you and the services that they provide you. Like you needed those other people. You couldn't be self-sufficient. And even now, as adults, you're not fully self-sufficient, because you'll call a friend for a favor. Hey, can you help me out with this? Hey, could you check this out for me? And like you're still having to voluntarily interact with other people, because you yourself alone, cannot just do everything by yourself.
I think
And
a good
human beings are
example.
just naturally social creatures.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have all the time in the world, right? I mean, if we had all the time in the world, then we could possibly do that. But think about it: if one person, if it were up to me to make my car and my house alone, it'd probably take me 1,000 years just to build a car by myself and
I mean, you
to
gotta
build.
gotta stop for
Look at the
breaks,
Amish. Look at the
smoke
Amish
breaks,
community.
drink breaks.
Yeah,
Gotta
They've proven that you
piss
can be
breaks.
self-sufficient, but they do it as a community. It's not just one person or two people.
Yeah.
I
yeah, it
think the
does take the
Amish
division of
are an
labor.
excellent example of how it could be. If you start at the grassroots level and build up, eventually you have all the bases covered as far as your necessity.
Yeah.
You'll have somebody that knows
Um.
how to do everything,
So
or a group of people.
right. So yeah, you definitely need the division of labor and the market in order to get by. And then Konkin here pointed out how our time essentially is something that we economize with. And then he continues on, all social interaction has a market component. Economics may be far more pervasive than we thought. It is difficult to imagine how we could have a free society, should we wish it, without a free market. Perhaps we should be clear with reference to what we mean by free. Free means the absence of coercion. Coercion is threatening violence upon someone in order to make him surrender something. In a strictly value-free sense, then coercive human action offers to create a greater disvalue to you if you do not yield up your lesser value. You gain nothing, but you lose less. Repeated application of coercion destroys values. The coercer gains without producing anything of value, and the victim always loses. Voluntary exchange, however, as we have seen, occurs when both feel a gain in a subjective value scale. Uneasiness is relieved in both directions. In coercive transactions, uneasiness is only increased. It's very true, right? I mean, the main difference between predatory, parasitic gain, what the state thrives off, and criminal elements in society thrive off of, just gaining at the expense of other people's labor, versus a mutual agreement. Hey, we're going to both trade, and we both agree on this trade, or on this wage, or on this contract. Those obviously both parties or all parties are getting involved because they're all gaining something from it. You wouldn't get involved with something or trade if you were losing in the trade.
Well, I mean, the threat of violence on an individual when like they don't pay up pretty much is kind of inherent in recent days. Like um, last year, I mean, the scale for IRS, like going to people's houses and collecting everybody's money, was like skyrocketing, right? Like lately they just felt like they have that sort of power to just go door to door, take your house, take your dog,
Yeah.
take your car. They'll take the shirt off your back if they want to.
Yeah, yeah, very parasitical. Obviously, there is no voluntary agreement to that. A lot of these people don't want to pay their taxes because they don't receive those services, whether schooling or.
Yeah, and it's funny because these snake tongues will like go and get you into these binding contracts that you really don't read because it's all in something like you don't really fully someone doesn't really fully understand, and pretty much like when you're like, oh, why are you taking my house? Why are you taking this? Why are you taking that? Then they'll just be like, well, you pretty much signed right here that we could. And then like the people were like kind of like, what? I never signed nothing like that. And
This is these lawyers and their shenanigans.
yep.
That's what they do. They take advantage of people on all fronts. That's why something that should be really simple, like a 2 or 3 page thing, they come up with what, 1,000 pages?
Oh yeah, with contracts and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that wouldn't exist in the contractual society. The reason contracts are so convoluted and confusing nowadays is because it's just the vestiges of true freedom. Like, I mean, it's a joke, but if society actually understood what contracts meant and how the importance of them, they would be simplified, because everyone would have to engage in contracts at that point. And of course, we want very simple contracts because we don't want to sign a 20-page, like
Yeah.
deal with.
Sign here, sign here, sign
Yeah.
here, sign there, initials there, date of birth, your phone number, signature. There you go. Thanks for your soul.
Right. So Konkin continues on here as far as going from the parasitical nature of those that live off of the labor of others. They say that if you get your goods stolen from you, retrieving your goods from the coercer with the threat of greater force and enough extra for your time and trouble at least wipes out your loss, although it leaves your original coercer with a net loss. At this point, he may finally become aware of the value destruction of coercion, or he may simply decide he needs still greater force. The biggest force of all in an area is usually the state, but we'll come to that later. So that's a good point too. It's like if we had a free society where everyone suffered their consequences for their actions, people would quit stealing a lot quicker, because they would quickly see, they would get punished and scrutinized and ostracized by society for their aggression, and then it wouldn't be a gain anymore to do that.
Yeah, I mean, like as far as the anarchy goes, when you break it down into micro communities, I mean, so I guess a council or a group of people would decide the punishment for thefts, or
I mean, I believe you have to have some kind of basic police force in place. It's just obviously gotten out of hand in America and other nations as well. You can't just all of a sudden not
this
have
is
the authority. It would be
this is the neat nature of anarchy,
you
is
have
that
to ease into the system. You couldn't just pull, yank the plug all of a sudden, and all of a sudden, boom. It's just there's no government or no authority. It'd have to be a transition phase, in other words.
Well,
from where we are today to where we want to be.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you could, essentially try to get rid of the state using the state, but that usually doesn't really work. It usually just increases the size of the state. States usually tend to grow and grow until they get so burdensome. They get so burdensome that they end up enslaving their populace and pillaging their people.
Could you imagine what would
into
happen if, like, all of a sudden
It would be it would be a wonderful world if we got rid of the state. There'd be a lot less
Yeah,
murder and a
but
lot less theft.
not initially, because there would be this anarchy in the
No,
streets.
yeah, anarchy is
These people weren't getting their EBT cards
not what
refilled like every
yeah,
month, you know.
okay.
Well, it would be more like more like chaos what you're talking about, but now that's still.
Yeah, I mean the rule of law, private law is perfectly legitimate,
We
and
get better at
private
that.
security is I think this is a philosophical foundation of anarcho-capitalism that you know, definitely we should definitely look into. Um, you know, because there is a foundation for this. It isn't just a cloud idea, you know, a cloud nine idea of, oh yeah, no more government and we'll see how what works out. No, there's an interlocking, very you know, complex yet very easy to be understood system of contracts and defense agencies and dispute resolution organizations that worry about these kind of things.
Yeah,
Just think if you
But
just
Steve, I
started
think we're kind of
abolishing agencies, like
I,
what we don't need, like how many alphabet agencies are there?
well, yeah, but see, that's the whole
Start there,
point.
you know.
Good luck abandoning, getting the government to cut itself off. Yeah, it ain't gonna happen. You're not gonna find any politician that's gonna actually cut down the scope of government. And this is why agorism seeks to do alternative means that don't rely on the state in order to circumvent the state, and not counting on the state to, you know, to be the source of its own destruction. It's not gonna do it. It's not gonna commit suicide for us.
yeah, I agree, but I think I see a point here is that if we don't come up with the plan B, you know, let's say that sudden remote, you know, uh, plug pull happens. I mean, yeah, you're gonna have people panic because no one told them plan B, because mommy and daddy, the state,
That's the
and Uncle
problem. Like
Sam
people have not like
ain't there to help them out anymore. So yeah, I guess initially they would freak out. It's like a kid being home by himself, no parents.
Yeah, and that's why you know, we have networks like these, and we have the philosophy being promoted, and you know, and you don't learn to swim until you get in the water. So yeah, I mean, some people are in a you don't learn to ride a bike until you actually get on it and start practicing. You might get a couple scrapes here and there, but humanity is not going to learn liberty until we actually get it.
Yeah, that's where groups like Free San Antonio and Axe and We Are Change come in. I mean, we're pretty much there underground or you know above ground on the net on the air,
what is that
trying
freedom
to
movement
tell everybody about
up
the plan
north?
B.
Yeah, yeah. So here, Conkin's continuing here on this. He's going on. He's saying that strictly speaking, the free market is the absence of all coercion. If there were only a few private thieves, and they were usually apprehended and forced to make restitution, something very close to a free market would exist. People would have locks, fences, alarms, and insurance policies, and protection agent policies, but would act otherwise on the assumption that they were free to give up their property to those of their choice, and to accept from others who gave it freely to them. They could not plan on people changing their minds, but they could make contracts exchanging a good here and now for one to be given later, so that others change their minds. Some compensation would result. So planning and chaos. It quickly becomes clear that planning is far more practical in a free market than in a coerced market. If coercion becomes regular and predictable, innovation, innovative people find ways around it, and soon enough join forces to evade the coercive regulations, frustrating and or starving the coercer. See the next chapter. That's a very good point, right? A coercive state, and he's making a good point here. It can't be predictable, and it can't be, you know, it can't be planned. It doesn't work when it's planned and predictable because you have people avoiding it, right? When it's predictable, when it's planned. I mean, we see it every day. People, you know, selling goods and services, not paying taxes on it. I mean,
What about
nonstop.
that guy with the tamales?
Yeah, guy selling tamales downtown.
Yeah, y'all see that when we post up the video.
We'll have it up. We'll have it up soon. We've been working on editing and getting the green screen here, and we're working on getting funds together and just getting this all organized. But we do want to get some of the foundational principles down here, so then that way we're all on board, you know. So new forms of coercion must be brought in, and economic planning is disrupted once again. Some argue that a free market is chaos. They see no one giving orders, and so they think that there is no order. In reality, a completely free market is highly decentralized order. Each cog in the great machine keeps itself well oiled and seeks to mesh itself with the other cogs in ever better fits. An even better example is the human body. While the brains have some overall direction, it cannot instruct various cells to go about their ways, delivering blood and building tissue and contacting muscle and transmitting energy. A disease or a parasite may direct some cells to common tasks, but this results in disruption of their natural order. Even without a foreign invader, if the brain could force some cells to act other than naturally, the entire body would suffer by the imposed order and the body could die. The fallacy in planned economics is the error of assuming that order is imposed. Scientists are aware that order is something you look for in nature. It is already there. Economics tells us that the attempts to impose order by coercion are destructive and chaotic. Yet economic planning of the imposed king is common to nearly all schools of economics. We begin to see where the gap between economics and fake economics lies, or so-called economics lies. This is a very good point, and this is awesome right here. I mean, the difference between spontaneous order and planned chaos, right? I mean, the government is planned chaos. That's all the government can do. The government can't bring in order. All the government does is steal, kill, and destroy.
Yeah.
People the last 100 years than anybody. Government.
Right.
Man, look at the projects.
250,
they
300
they
million
plan that
people.
chaos. Look at Detroit. They plan that chaos.
Yeah, that's planned chaos.
know.
Whereas
The border right now.
right.
Planned chaos.
Yep.
Whereas the market it's the opposite. It's spontaneous, right? It's sporadic. It's unpredictable, right? So it's not really planned at all. It's anarchy, but it's order. In the end, and it's order. Like the guy that made us lunch today when we want to go eat. There was no bureaucrat forcing them to cook in a certain way. There wasn't a law passed that said we had to meet up at 6 at the restaurant. I mean, all these things were spontaneously done. But you know what? And the end result was this beauty of order, right? We all got fed, and we all got there was no chaos. Yeah.
There wasn't a state congressman or representative having to sit there talk to everybody. Listen, everybody, there's gonna be a group of people coming by, reading off the teleprompter. It should be good for America.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all these elections are. They just change the birdcage liner.
Yeah.
They're not. None of these politicians are in power. They're just the puppets that they put out in front of everybody to vote for.
Yeah. I mean, the state apparatus is an evil beast.
It's the banks that are running things.
It needs to be
It's
slain.
the Goldman Sachs. It's the J.P. Morgan Chases. It's the Wells Fargo. The Wachovias.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean,
Barclays
once
in London, too.
we I mean, definitely the banks. I mean, that's the heart of it. But I mean, we got
They're the ones
it's
that
once you
really
understand
run Washington.
it's once you
All these
understand
politicians.
money, right? And once you understand money and coercion and monopoly, how the government has forced a monopoly on the money supply, that's what's given them their power. So I mean, they can have all the banks they want, but if they didn't have government forcing their crappy money on us, they would have they would have little to no power.
They would have nothing.
They would have nothing, exactly.
Not a damn thing.
So competition and monopoly here he gets into. It's nice if more than one person offers to trade the same thing with you. You usually can get a better deal. When more than one seller offers identical goods, and when more than one buyer offers to acquire the same goods, pure competition exists. If only one buyer or seller is available, the buyer or seller is said to have a monopoly. Competition is always good in the sense that it maximizes value of exchanges. Although it would take more theory to prove this, most people have had enough experience to accept the foregoing as a factual statement. Surely not all monopoly is bad. If we banned all monopoly, then Leonardo da Vinci would have had to give up painting what only he could paint, and the Beatles would have to stop composing what only they could compose. In fact, since a little bit of artistry distinguishes all goods, pure competition is impossible. There are no identical products. Yet, for your subjective purposes, you can see no differences and worth paying from among all sorts of goods, and they do not have to be all in this, similar. With $15, you might decide to buy a book, you wish to spend the evening with. Finding the book sold, you consider a movie instead. The lines are too long, so you buy a six-pack and go home. Someone else would have different goods competing for those $15, even if he had started out trying to buy the same book. If I told you at this point that some economists define the free market as a perfectly competitive market, you might wonder when they lost their senses. After all, if people want to produce different things, remember the division of labor, and are more productive doing so, you will not get perfect competition in a free market. You will have lots of competition by giving each human actor maximum freedom to explore his values and find alternatives. Now, if I tell you that these economists say that if a market is not perfectly competitive, force should be used to make it so, you probably are beginning to wonder if I have not lost my senses. Whatever these economists are after, it is not a free market, nor will they generate any gains since values are always net destroyed by coercion. Adam Smith defined monopoly as a grant of exclusive trading by the king. It was a royal privilege, that is, the state coerced some people not to produce goods when the king's friends were already doing so. Breaking up these forced monopolies was an issue for freedom lovers, and rightfully so. The problems arose when people stopped thinking clearly, or had their thoughts muddled by economists. Monopoly became bad, not because it was coercive, but because it was not competitive. Clear thinking and consistency led us easily to realize the opposite of forced monopoly and of forced competition is natural monopoly and free competition. The correct opposition is the coerced market versus the free market. So I think that's a good point. I mean, you might have natural monopolies arising in a given area. It may be that in a certain area only, out of the two main security providers, one of them is way, vastly way better than the other one. And because of that, the majority of people go with that one. But so long as you allow for that free competition to exist, it gives a possibility for future competition, or at least more of a clearer example of you're right, pure competition, even though you can never have such a thing. That's a very good point. I mean, it'd be an illusion to believe that the market is purely free, free competition, that there's no natural monopolies. Of course, there's going to be natural monopolies arising in certain areas. I mean,
and then there are those companies that actually take measures to create monopolies. They'll drive the smaller guy out of business.
Well, yeah, they'll use government to stifle the little guy out.
Yeah, like for instance, wasn't there back in the day a little shop? Remember underneath the McDonald's, you go downstairs, it's like a little basement shop, kind of like the one by Fuddruckers.
Oh yeah, downtown.
There was one a long time ago. There's two little shops around there, and they were at basement level back in the day. Well, I bet you anything, Monopoly McDonald's, realize, oh well, I got these shops at my feet, and so I might as well just take them out so people don't get distracted by their businesses and just come straight to mine. Because like I haven't seen any business open up under there, in forever.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at downtown, all it is monopoly stores.
This would be forced monopoly stores, because McDonald's and Walmart receive nothing but a bunch of subsidies from the state.
Yeah, and what about the CVS down there? I mean, and all you see is like the only things that stand up really is restaurants and bars. All the little shops and so forth have slowly been disappearing.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're definitely living under a coerced market and not anything near to a free market. But yeah, I mean, I think Conklin brought up a good point here, is that just because something is a monopoly, if it's not using force, then there's nothing wrong with it, right? If it's a natural monopoly that everyone enjoys their services, and they're not getting subsidies, and they're not getting tax breaks, and they're not, and by tax breaks I mean, they don't have a comparative advantage through the tax regulation.
Mama Margie's. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You read that at that place?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
What about it?
Yeah, well, that was a little family shop that just started a long time ago.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, not too long ago, maybe like 12 years ago. But now they have like I think 3 locations now,
Yeah, here
just
in
here in
town.
San Antonio. I mean, that's exactly what you're talking about. Like, I mean, they didn't receive anything. You got some hardworking Mexicans
Yeah.
building it from the ground up.
Should give a shout out to that place we ate earlier. What was the name of that place?
Senor Veggie. We tried Senor Veggie out
Oh yeah, that place
Senor
is pretty good.
Veggie.
off of
I liked it a lot. It was
Presa
different.
Street,
It was
South Presa
I
Street.
different.
like their Texan chili.
Yeah, good stuff, right?
I don't
Yeah.
remember what I
Well,
had.
what did you have, Rich?
Like their bean burger or something, bean patty burger,
How was
some
that?
baked potato soup. It was good stuff, man.
Man,
Yummy.
yeah, hell yeah.
Some of that
I had those
vegetarian.
new tacos.
Giving me the munchies.
The hummus tacos, I believe.
All right.
Yeah, yeah. So let's see here. So then he gets into cartels here next. Cartels. One problem with monopoly we seem to have overlooked. Do not the big get bigger and the small get driven out, even if the market is left alone? The answer is obviously, empirically, historically, it has never happened. There is extensive literature by the better sorts of economists on many historical examples where businesses were accused of forming trusts, that is, attempting to monopolize one industry through cartels. Most cases, when state trustbusters were brought in to break up a large company, proved to have been instigated by smaller companies against a more efficient competitor. That's interesting, right? So a bunch of small companies get together to get the government to disband this big company because they're more efficient, and these smaller companies don't like it.
Only saw a little bit more of that going on.
These mega corporations get big time tax breaks too. Some of them pay little to no tax.
Well, yeah, that's exactly that's
like
part of the
General Electric. They pay well under the tax rate.
yeah. Well, and not that we are like calling for like some kind of like equal tax on everybody, but we are saying that the fact that they don't get taxed like everyone else does gives them comparative advantage in the marketplace, which is unfair. So cartels, as Dr. Murray Rothbard has beautifully shown, tend to break up from market forces. The most efficient cartel member can outsell his fellow members and has a tremendous incentive to cheat on the cartel agreement. He can steal the customers from his fellow members, and soon does, under the table. Upon discovery, his fellow cartel members fight back by cutting prices, and the cartel disintegrates. In a coerced market, however, the cartel will run to someone to force compliance with the cartel. That someone is, in any realistic, unfree market, the state. And once again, we are brought back to the forced or state monopoly. This is a good point, right? Only the state has enough power to actually bind a cartel, right? Because if a bunch of businesses got together, this Federal Reserve is a good example of this. It's a cartel. The Federal Reserve is a conglomeration of a bunch of other banks, right?
Privately owned bank.
Yeah, so it's a cartel. But would any of those would that cartel actually exist if it wasn't for government? I mean, would those banks actually choose to work together, or would they compete with each other and then eventually break off their little deals, and try to offer try to one up
loan our government the money to keep operating, and it's like a loan with interest that we have to pay back.
Well, yeah. Well, that's right. That's the bad thing of a forced state monopoly or state cartel. But yeah, but I mean, this brings up a really good point here. Is that like Rothbard brought up, is like cartels can only exist with the state forcing compliance by all the party members, right? So the state forces all the banks that make up the Federal Reserve to bind together and form the Federal Reserve. They don't have an option whether they can opt out or leave the cartel, or print their own alternative money, or do whatever. No, they're bound to this entity known as the Federal Reserve Bank.
Oh yeah, could you imagine the ripple effect of someone starting open the first national Bitcoin bank?
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. You have to.
Oh man, you'll have IRS feds up the wazoo, cracking at your door, at your bank door.
Yeah, right.
Uh,
Nonstop.
but it would be funny to see how many people would opt out of their banks and go to Bitcoin, National Bitcoin Bank.
Ooh.
I
Ooh,
saw the
that
first
would be
one.
a sight to see.
Well, it'd be decentralized. Different people offering that, those kind of banks. But
Yeah.
it will definitely is going to be interesting the next couple of years.
I saw the very first Bitcoin commercial I've ever seen on television.
Oh yeah.
I don't forget what it was for, but it said now accepts Bitcoin, so it's definitely becoming legit. I would say.
Oh yeah, it's been legit. Bitcoin's a revolution when it comes to money.
Might be something good to invest a little money in.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. So yeah, I mean that's a really good point. Only cartels are only forced on by the state. Then he has another section here: profit and enterprise. Sometimes the terms free enterprise and capitalism are used to mean free market capitalism. Um, Capitalism means the ideology of capital or capitalists. Before Marx came along, the pure free marketeer Thomas Hodgkin had already used the term capitalism as a pejorative. Capitalists were trying to use coercion, the state, to restrict the market. Capitalism then does not describe a free market, but a form of statism. See Chapter 5. Like communism. Here, unfortunately, this is one of the main issues of layers of dust here that Konkin, kind of got completely wrong. Is that unfortunately, like, Thomas Hodgkin wasn't a pure free marketeer, but that's aside from the point. He was actually a pretty outspoken socialist. But but
He was actually a New World Order fanatic. He was relapsing.
But he wasn't, yeah, right. But he wasn't the first guy to come up with the term capitalist or capitalism. Actually, the term had been used long before. An economist by the name of Turgot, I forget the actual quote. I'm going to paraphrase on this, but Turgot, in his writings, The Accumulation of Wealth, this guy was a French economist from like the 1700s, like born and died way before Hodgkins. This guy Thomas Hodgkins was even born. But so I mean, this was kind of like an epic fail for Konkin here. But
Hodgkins was just a twinkle in his daddy's eye.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, Turgot points out how his quote was when he used the term capitalist for the first time ever. At least the oldest reference that I have found. He basically, his quote was like, out of the producing class, there's two main groups: that of the mere workers and the laborers, and that of the capitalists and the entrepreneurs, who basically save all the money and make all the investments and allow industry to flourish, right? And basically Turgot was pointing out in this quote, that's like a rough, like, I don't have it here in front of me. That's just a rough, like, summation of what it said, but essentially he's pointing out that out of the productive class, there's two divisions within the productive class. There's your worker, right? All workers are producers, and then there's your capitalists, those workers that were able to save some investment and then invested into capital, invested into a business, invested into wages, into something. And those two groups, the savers and the workers, are the ones that form the productive class. That's what all he was really saying. So it was capitalism in a good light, in the actual proper sense of the word. And this is where like a big division between agorism and anarcho-capitalism arises, is because agorists, you know, uh, tend to take Samuel Edward Konkin's words verbatim, just like a lot of ANCAPs take Murray Rothbard's words verbatim. They're not able to see that this point was wrong, was off point. Unfortunately, right? I mean, it happens to the best of us, right? This guy was just human. Samuel Konkin was just a human being, as Rothbard. They weren't like demigods of the gods of economics.
They don't know all knowledge of the universe. I mean, you gotta mess up at some points. Come on.
Yeah, not a big deal, right? I mean, it doesn't affect just because it's a word, whether capitalism is a legit word to use or not. It's kind of in the semantics, but historically, it wasn't used in this negative light.
Yeah,
and
no, apparently he wasn't going to movie theaters and buying books. He was drinking too many six packs.
Definitely have to watch that alcohol intake for sure.
Yeah.
Don't let that get out of control.
So he says here that he continues on. Free enterprise can only exist in a free market and is an acceptable synonym. Yet while the term market covers all human transactions, enterprise seems limited to certain types of business. And what about profit? Is it the result of exploitation, enterprise, hard work, or something else? Applying economic knowledge here resolves the problem clearly, but it will take a little effort to follow through. According to Austrian economics, there are three productive functions in the marketplace: labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. In the simplest primitive economy, capital consists of tools, food you have stored up to keep you going until your harvest comes in, or you can sell shoes, or you can sell the shoes that you made, and storefronts or wagons to take your goods to the market. Labor is the work you put into farming or shoemaking or whatever, and entrepreneurship is the direction, the reins of the operation, deciding where to invest the capital and which and how many workers to hire. As the market progresses to greater wealth and complexity, we can see that the important components of entrepreneurship are risk-taking and innovation. Speculators, inventors, and artists without patrons are the best known fairly pure entrepreneurs. They take risks, create, one, a product that did not exist before, which turns out to have a demand, and two, a better product to replace one that existed before, winning away the demand, and three, a cheaper method of producing or marketing the same product again, winning away with demand. The gain resulting from the pure entrepreneurship is profit. It is not the everyday return on investment that businessman counts over his expenses and takes home. Wait, so that last sentence here. The gain result from the pure entrepreneurship is profit. It is not the everyday return on investment that a businessman counts over his expense and that he takes home. I didn't catch that last sentence there, but so windfall profits occur when there is a sudden change in the market conditions, such as weather wiping out crops or producing bumper harvests, mineral and oil strikes suddenly coming onto the market, or when the market is not free. Sudden government interference in the marketplace, for example. Those who make the most effort to anticipate the unexpected tend to make the most profits. Taking risks also means one can introduce products no one wants, invent devices that are laughed away, and create artsy trash, like the kind the city pays for downtown everywhere. Such creations incur negative profit, that is loss. And alas, this is the least common historically form of profit, is the loss, the profit loss. Nonetheless, without entrepreneurship, enterprise, the economy would stagnate as people continue investing in the same capital in the same way over and over, and workers continue at the same jobs. When skilled laborers begin to die out and capital runs out of components, such as minerals at mines or new forests for timber, the economy would regress and collapse. Everyone is part laborer and pan-capitalist and part entrepreneur, but by division of labor we tend to specialize. There is nothing to prevent us from all being wealthy, someday at any rate, and using our money, as James Garner put it so well in his film The Wheeler Dealers, in a way of keeping score in capital investment. And capital in the form of ever more intelligent computers can reduce labor to a vestigial activity as necessary as the human appendix. Entrepreneurship, on the other hand, is increased, not decreased, by the progressive market. As our society becomes more complex and more wealthy, more people will specialize in entrepreneurial activity, and more people must be free to do so. Entrepreneurship cannot be forced. When bureaucrats plan, they spend their time finding ways of covering their posteriors and pass the losses on to the taxpayers. They fear replacement, and since they reap little or no reward for success, they become timid about actually taking risks and spend their time creating red tape entanglements designed to stem innovation. That was a pretty loaded
Yeah.
section there.
I think I'm thinking just like geeked out a little bit.
It's good stuff, though. I mean, it definitely makes sense, right? I mean, if it wasn't for entrepreneurs and capitalists, just like Turgot was pointing out back in the 1700s, if it wasn't for those people saving money and taking risks and innovative investments and whatnot, the economy wouldn't change. There would be no investment. There would be no new technology because it took someone taking a risk in order to invest into such a thing.
Yeah, I mean, Steve Jobs had to go up to someone and be like, "Hey, man, I got this crazy idea. You got any money?"
Exactly, and whoever gave him the money was taking a big risk with him
He's like, "I don't
at the
know,
time.
man. It's a little tight right now." He's just like,
How
"Nah."
many thousands did you want?
He's just like, "I swear, man. I'm thinking about this thing, calling it Apple.
Apple
I'm not
computer.
investing in apples."
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well,
No, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean that's a good example right there. Boom.
I mean, he may not be around, but I'm pretty sure there are investors around.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point right there. I mean, if it wasn't for capitalists saving money and entrepreneurs investing their capital into the market, we wouldn't even have Apple, right?
Yeah, I mean,
We wouldn't even have half the technology we have today if it wasn't for. We wouldn't have anything really when you really start to like analyze how much
yeah,
the market
I mean,
plays into all this.
look at that skateboarder Rob Dyrdek. Like, come on, he went from skateboarding to who was it? He got signed on to DC, and then he started his own clothing line. That's when he first started his own entrepreneurship, started tapping into that. Then he started investing into like his cousin's business, which was producing music and instrumentals. And then he went as far as to investing in a NASCAR, or not NASCAR, a race car at the X Games, and he'll
Oh,
be doing
nice.
that. And then he started his own business. Now he got his own little like offices. He got everybody working for him. Like, I mean, come on, man. Like that dude started by skating. He wasn't no like can't rat on that guy. I mean, can't like you can't be talking any mess about him. Most people are like,
Oh,
oh
what
well,
do you
he's
mean? So
just
he's not a selfish prick?
well, hey man, in a society, you're gonna have your pricks out there. You're gonna have your self righteous, self confident.
No, yeah, but I was just playing the leftist attack.
Yeah, I know. He's just
He's a
like
rich snob. Like,
he's a rich snob. It's just like, nah, dude, you gotta remember this dude was a kid out on the streets every day skating. That's how he got famous. And you know what? He did something with his money. He invested.
yeah, definitely. And I'm sorry for saying leftist. I know that was offensive towards me and many of you listeners. That's not what I meant. Statist is what I meant.
Free.
All them statists, yeah. They're like, oh, you're a business owner. You must be some
That's all right. That's all right.
privileged racist or something.
As far as me and you are concerned, we live in a free society.
Yeah, right. Free as we'll ever be is bringing in that freedom to your own personal life. But here we're wrapping up here this second chapter, Applied Economics, in the Agorist Primer Counter Economics Total Freedom in You by Samuel Edward Konkin. This is the Agora Underground here on Voluntary Virtues Network, and we're just here reading up on Chapter 2 of this, reading into regulation here. There's nothing positive to say about regulation. Regulation is coercion. It prevents subjective value from being satisfied, protecting only those who do not wish to be protected and penalizing only the law-abiding. Regulation destroys initiative and stifles innovation. Regulation stagnates markets. Regulation can and does kill people when the regulations deny victims the right to take a chance with so-called risky medication. Regulation is motivated by fear, envy, and colossal ignorance. There is nothing that can protect innocent people more than a thorough education and vigorous pursuit of fraud. Yet regulation of advertising and experimentation destroys information transfer, and regulation of quality merely certifies incompetent professionals and protects them from fraud charges. If all the regulation passed in any country you wish to name were completely obeyed, let alone enforced, we would all be dead. Consider a particularly
That's a
pathological.
little morbid.
It's true, right? I mean, I imagine how many laws are on the book, regulations are on the books that would basically label human beings, a scourge on the earth to be,
Right?
Consider a particularly pathological case in the United States of America. If you charge a price for your product higher than your competitors, this is taking as evidence under the Sherman Antitrust Act that you have a monopoly, and charges may be brought against you. The same problem arises if you charge the same. That is considered evidence of cartel, and you and your competitors can all be fined. Finally, if you charge less than your competitors, you're violating the fair trade laws in most states and can be arrested and fined. It is impossible to obey all the regulations. That's funny, right? You sell a product for too much, breaking regulations. Sell it for the same price, breaking regulations. You sell it for cheaper than everyone else, you're breaking regulation.
It's just like, damn, then how am I supposed to sell this? It's like, we'll tell you
You're
how
not
to sell
supposed
it.
to, yeah.
Uncle Sam will come by your store and tell you how to run it with a boot in your ass.
Yeah, you didn't build that.
Oh shit! Well, what are we getting into next here, Richard? I already see it coming up.
All
The
right,
big,
it's
the
coming.
big T.
The big T.
And we're not talking about Texas. We're
Yeah.
talking about taxation.
Taxation.
Oh man.
There is a serious moral question about taxation that we will leave for later. Let it suffice now to recognize that taxation takes something from someone against his or her will and is a violation of his or her subjective values. Any specific form of taxation directs resources counter-entrepreneurially. In short, taxation has no place in a free market. That's not even getting into the morals of it.
It's just all like, we're not gonna talk about that right now.
Right.
I guess the book already knew, like, oh snap, talking about taxation, we're gonna get some people wild up.
You're just bringing it in slowly.
Yeah. you gotta treat taxation like it was in the virgin.
Yeah, right.
You gotta take it real slow.
Interest here, next section. There are three very closely related concepts in economics, and they have to do with capital, land, and money. It is often said that capital earns a rate of return on investment. Remember, only entrepreneurs make profits. Land earns rent, and money earns interest. With an efficient medium of exchange, an entrepreneur will quickly shift from capital goods of one type to another if the rate of return is higher in one sector of the market than in the other. Land is a fixed form of capital, and if we are in a free market, we should expect rent to come to equal the rate of return as in other investments, assuming no risks where profit would be added or subtracted. And so it is with interest. Originary interest is what money earns if you lend it out to an entrepreneur risk-free. Should you accept risk yourself, you may add on a risk component, a form of profit. At the same level of risk in a highly developed market, interest rates should stabilize and slowly decrease as wealth increases. Only if something becomes powerful enough or coercive enough to monopolize by force all the media of exchange or money supply, and then increase it so that the value of each unit declines, will another component appear to increase the interest rate, regardless of risk. Conceivably, it could decrease the money supply so that the value would be expected to increase and interest to be discontinued. In an extreme case, the inflationary component could drive interest rates to zero or negative. That is, someone pays you to take his money and give it back to him later. Deflation is rare, and there is very little incentive for controllers of the money supply to deflate. Brings us to our next section, is inflation. But that's interesting there as far as interest goes. And this really proves where, I think this is really crucial to have to emphasize here real quick, is that Konkin totally believed in interest and a return on your money if you lent it out, depending on the level of risk, which is how interest rates are determined. It's the level of risk. So, I mean, he's a free market proponent. He's on the side of Frederick Bastiat when Frederick Bastiat debated Proudhon.
Mr. Bastiat.
Yeah, Mr. Bastiat, when he debated Proudhon, Joseph Proudhon, the founder of mutualism, over interest and rent.
Lost miserably.
Bastiat, yeah, Proudhon lost misery. Bastiat owned up on him. And here, Konkin is siding with Bastiat. I mean, he's defending rent. He's defending interest. So this idea that I know a lot of you ANCAPs are turned off to agorism because you see all of a sudden you do a cursory web search on it and you find that all these, the mutualist alliance of, of mutualists and agorists or whatever, or like the alliance of like syndicalists and agorists. It's like, what the heck is all this? It's like none of these people believe in interest rates or rent or any of this, right? So yeah, there seems to be a dirtying of the a mudding of the waters, right?
It needs to stop being a taboo.
Yeah, it seems like they're trying to mix ideologies here when they're not supposed to be mixed. So this, I mean, here's just a line of thinking. I think this little section here on interest really, really highlights how Konkin was straight up ANCAP, right? I mean, he was capitalist all the way. I mean, so there's nothing really mutualist about that. Inflation here, a section on inflation. Understanding how inflation works and what to do about it made the fortunes of the gold bugs, an investment analysis mentioned earlier. While there is considerable fog and confusion thrown around this subject, inflation is simple enough to understand if you follow our step-by-step logic and always watch for inconsistencies. From Chapter 1, we know what money is. Free market money could be affected by, say, a gold strike, or if for some reason the gold was all kept at Fort Knox, by James Bond's Goldfinger nuking it. Even then, there would be a brief dip or jump in the price of gold. Price of money is simply the inverse of the prices of everything bought with it, and stability would resume at a new level. In a worldwide market, the effect, even of nuking Fort Knox, would be barely noticeable. Inflation is the increase of money supply. Inflation results only when the most powerful force in society, the state, commands a monopolistic fiat money system, creates legal tender laws. Legal tender compels the monopoly contracts are not upheld in other tender or money. And with an army and police to back it up, debases a form of money that was acceptable in the marketplace. States that have imposed fiat money from scratch, such as the newly emerging third world countries, find their money rapidly rejected in favor of foreign currencies and gold. The usual route to inflation takes 4 steps. 1. Replacement of money by certificates for the money. A weight of gold or silver is replaced by certificate claiming an ounce of gold or pound of silver in some precious metal warehouse or bank. 2. Legal definition or possession of a certificate as equivalent to possessing the wealth, the actual wealth the government gets into the act. 3. Restriction of all exchanges save primitive bartering to the legal certificates. This is the creation of legal tender. And 4. Issuing certificates without money to back them up. At this point, we have fiat money and inflation. Inflation leads to the crack-up booms, Germany in 1923, and depressions, U.S. in 1929. This analysis is a bit more complicated and is best left to the more cataclysmic scenarios we'll present near to the end of the book. Oh, and as you probably guessed, one result of inflation is a general rise in price levels. Notice some prices rise faster than others, and some even seem to drop. Only the distortion is common to all price changes. And he wraps it up here with a little knowledge. If you have mastered the first 2 chapters, congratulations. You will quickly discover 2 things by simply reading your daily newspaper or news blog or shooting the breeze with your acquaintances. First, you will discover the appalling level of ignorance with which most of society is affected. Be careful. Some people get very irritable when challenged by someone who knows what he or she is talking about. A knowledgeable person might be tempted to use his knowledge to bilk the ignorant. Many people with only a little knowledge do just that. However, there are moral ways to profit by your understanding, and by all means go do it. Secondly, you will discover that the appalling web of statism is controlling or attempting to control nearly every aspect of human action. You will probably feel smothered, and that is not surprising. You may also feel like giving up and giving in. But survival alone dictates otherwise. Survival, let alone prosperity, demands that you tear through the web of legislation and follow nature's laws instead. You must abandon economics to the regulators and the political businessmen who play ball with them. You are left with the alternative: stifle yourself and starve, or embrace counter economics. And that's what we'll be discussing next week, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be breaking down counter economics and applied counter economics, the means to achieving a stateless Agorist society. We just finished reading here Chapter 2, Applied Economics, in the Agorist Primer, written by Samuel Konkin III. This is the Agora Underground here on the Voluntary Virtues Network.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody that's listening, everybody that's going to listen. Go ahead and check out ACT, Agorist Central Texas, and check out Free San Antonio. We have a page.
Yeah, on Facebook.
Yeah.
Working on actual web pages to get up pretty soon.
Yeah, and we're also working on a video to get posted up here pretty soon. It's pretty wild stuff here out on the mean streets of San Antonio.
We'll have a green screen soon enough.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Shanklin, for letting us on yet again. We're going to be bringing anarchy straight to your face. Everybody, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Anarchy Squared. Agora, Anarchy Action, ladies and gentlemen. Catch you on the flip.